Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Dark, Season 3, Episode 7. It's called Between the Time. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. And I get to talk about aspect ratios this episode because Dark finally did something it hadn't done before. It was like, hey, here's a new aspect ratio for one specific time period. Or even a time period, because it kind of overlaps with a time period we've had. So, more just a specific character thread. That if anything.
Is it everything with that character, or is it just the stuff presented as the lecture stuff?
Nah, everything with him building the machine in the bunker was all in that aspect ratio as well.
Fair enough.
So we're talking about Tannhaus, of course, who explains Schrodinger's cat at the start of the episode, which it's funny because one of our viewers who talks to me during the streams regularly. I happen to know that he hates whenever a movie or TV show decides to try and explain Schrodinger's cat, and he mentioned on the last stream that there's a scene coming up in Dark that made him almost quit the show. And I was like, oh, I wonder what this is. And then
what's so bad about it?
He just hates it. He was watching Coherence like a couple of months ago and was complaining about how they were explaining Schrodinger's cat. But of course, relevant in the context of the Martha showing up at the house and those two divergent timelines from that point on.
Was another on Martha specifically. There was another point we were so close to getting last time, where we were like, well, there's got to be another overlapping timeline. We just couldn't quite figure out where, and it was just it's like the same place essentially. Yeah,
it's just the moment with Bartos showing up. Either Bartos shows up and grabs her and stops her from going in.
Well, that's not. I think he's there both times because I think the impression is she chooses to ignore him and goes in anyway, and one she listens.
Oh yeah, of course, yes. So Bartos shows up no matter what, but her reaction to him changes. So we have. I don't think we have 4. I think we have 3 versions of events, not 4. Because the Earth, because in the Jonas 2, if you will, the one where she doesn't appear is equal to the one where she just chooses not to go in. So I think those 2 are actually the same thing. So there's 3 actual different strands, potentially. Sure. So that explains the 2 Marthas, and it explains the 2 Jonases.
Yes.
That's where we are.
It's really interesting just as a concept of what this episode is, because we were like, at the end of the last episode, we were like, what are these next 2 going to be? And we kind of said, well, if it was just one left, we thought it would be, the aftermath.
Which it pretty much looks like the finale is going to be. This penultimate episode, for the most part, is kind of just tying up loose ends of all these questions that you might have had about the timeline before.
It's pretty much just everything else, all the other major beats that happen in the standard loop.
Yeah, which I'll be slightly negative here and say I'm not entirely sure we needed all of these things to be cleared up to this extent. Like, I don't know if we needed every one of these steps to be spelled out for us. Like, I was happy with some of it just being like, okay, we can kind of just assume A to B from what we know.
Sure. I think I would be more negative if it wasn't so compelling to watch still. Because it was.
There's a couple of neat things in here. There's one actually that confirms something that I think we theorized about, maybe in season 1, but definitely in season 2, if not in season 1. And that was the idea that can someone be killed if they already have an older self. Now, admittedly, having multiple versions of like Jonas's paths kind of murkies this a little bit, but it very clearly states in this episode, because Jonas, after a couple of years trying to get the God particle to get going again with Claudia, he's down in the dumps, he's feeling at his lowest point. He actually goes and tries to commit suicide the same way his father did, the same way Michael did, in the same room. And it just, and it looks like it's about to happen. It's just at the last second, young Noah comes in and cuts him down.
Yeah.
And then
it's particularly like that as well for him, who has been through being hanged before. He knows what it feels like.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. But Noah then demonstrates the point here, which is that he's like, hey, take this gun, try and shoot yourself, and he can. And then he takes the same gun and shoots it at the wall, and it stops jamming, just miraculously starts firing again, and it's like very clear. Like, and I was like, oh, this is Failed Destination stuff. This is Failed Destination 2. which they brought up in that movie.
And the reason is this particular Jonas becomes Adam, so he is safe.
Yes. I mean, that's not what he wants. I mean, essentially, Adam's whole plot from this point on is that he spends 60 years trying to commit suicide. That's it's a 60-year suicide attempt, basically.
It's not just a suicide attempt; it's a suicide pact with the world, or with two worlds.
Sure, yes. Yes, I mean, you could even call it a 66-year genocide attempt, perhaps, if you want to put it that way. But
you really could, yeah.
But it's really all about him just wanting to end this. He doesn't want to be a part of this anymore. To quote the great Tommy Wiseau, "I am done with this world." Or actually, I think it's "I'm fed up with this world," but it's the same difference.
How dare you bring Dark down by having that as a quotation in this discussion?
Hey, if old Claudia dyed her hair, she'd have a bit of a Tommy Wiseau thing going on, alright? She lets it go grey so it doesn't, but she could. If she wanted to dye that hair black, she could totally be going around doing Tommy Wiseau impressions.
I can kind of see where you're coming from.
So the actual advancement in the plot, of course, is when we get to the end of the episode. Obviously, we'll go back and talk about all the threads, but is that the Adam's plan finishes. Martha, who's sitting in the chair, swallowed up into the vortex and goes wherever. If not just eviscerated. Although given this show, I expect goes somewhere. And he takes a moment, he looks down at his hands, and he's like, "What the hell? I'm still here. Why am I still here? What? This can't be."
Yeah, I have a theory as to where this Martha went.
Go on.
Do you remember the figure in the black goo that Martha on Earth 2 saw that kind of started all of this for her? I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of her. This version of it is that there.
Okay, how do you explain the one that Jonas saw in season 1 then? Where did that one come from? If this Martha is the Martha vision that she had.
I would not be surprised if Eve
As
intentionally does a similar plot. No, with her knowing, presumably this doesn't end the timeline, because that was her whole thing. Is Adam doesn't realize how things are connected. If in many ways this is the start of Martha's journey that he's accidentally causing here, then it wouldn't surprise me if she intentionally engineers it to happen for Jonas as well.
Yeah. Where does actually, if Bartosz showing up and Martha making that choice to go in the house or not is her divergent path, where does the one who chooses not to go with Bartosz get the big scar?
The one that doesn't go with her, that is the one that gets the big scar, isn't it? That's the one that doesn't go with Bartosz goes into Jonah. Jonah. That's the one we've been seeing all season with Adam, right?
The one who gets the big scar is the one that Bartosz takes to Eve, and Eve scars her in the face.
Right. Yes.
Right. So that big scar, the big one. No, I'm not talking about the little scar under the eye. I'm talking about the big one that's going all down the face.
I mean, I would say the other one is this version that we see with Adam at the end of the world.
Yeah, but she's got the scar.
Oh, does she? Huh. I don't know then.
She always had the scar. That's what confused me last episode. That's why I always thought that she was later in the timeline, if it was just that simple. But
yeah, fair point.
So I don't know where she gets that scar then. If she's the one who doesn't end up with Adam, then where does the one that ends up with Adam get the scar? I mean, there's a lot going on here.
Yes, yeah, there is.
Maybe this is one of these small details that's going to take a little bit of re-examining and multiple watches to actually really kind of nail down.
Yeah, and this episode in particular is very fragmented. Like we can kind of break it down plot by plot still, but this is jumping all over the place.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite expertly done. So obviously they felt the need to have the exact years on the screen every time it changed, but if you actually look at how the stories flow in each plot line, they're actually all very sequential. You can clearly, like, the story of, say, like, Elizabeth and Noah, which starts off in, like, 2020, and it's them, trying to find the entrance to the passageway. That, if you take that forward in conjunction, again, with Jonas and Claudia's stuff, it just goes in order. Like, as much as every time we go back to it, a few years have jumped ahead, or a big chunk of years have jumped ahead, it's always in order, so it never feels that confusing to actually watch.
It's never confusing, no, plot by plot. It's just, it feels like you're jumping around a lot, because you're jumping, over 3 different centuries. Yeah.
And there's lots of little moments that it kind of, like, shows you, like, for example, Claudia taking the pages out of the book, which obviously was a big part of season 2, was Noah tracking down those pages from her. Yeah. Noah clearly doesn't trust her. Elizabeth, I mean, it's kind of a sad element. I thought that Elizabeth kept, like, asking about paradise, because she's clearly just that lost and she has nothing to be happy for. That she needs to be promised of this paradise that she's going to get to at some point.
kind of on that, on this episode, this is the most it's sold me on Noah. Like think back to season 1, Noah was kind of the villain for a lot of that season. And here he's one of the most sympathetic characters in the episode.
Yeah,
he's one of the most genuine.
His daughter is taken from him, and this is the beautiful thing, is that obviously they called her daughter Charlotte, and I assume just named after Elizabeth's mother. She's, I want to name her Charlotte after my mother.
Yeah.
And that's why the shock for Noah when he finds out in season 2, when he gets those pages, when he realizes, oh wait, Charlotte is that Charlotte. Yeah. So no, I mean there's wonderful, great details in all of these beats.
And on Charlotte, like, I think Tannhaus's original, the granddaughter that died, was in the crash, was also called Charlotte.
Yeah. So a lot of Charlottes going around.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, actually, there's something else I was thinking about. Just more connections here. Is that so obviously this episode outright confirms, because we get Bartos' story meeting Celia, because Celia's come back from the future into this time period and strikes up the romance with Bartos, which leads to the birth of Noah, slash Hanno, and then of course later Agnes. And I love Bartos' reaction when he hears, oh, she wants to call her Agnes, because he knows who that is clearly. And it's like a bit of a moment for him. But what I love about this is that it actually means that, because obviously this connects more people to things than there was originally, because doesn't this now mean that Jonas is somehow also related to let me again, this is one of these things where I was thinking during the episode, but now I'm trying to retrace my steps. It's actually kind of difficult to do so. Right. So Noah's parents are Bartos and Celia.
Yes.
Celia's mother is Hannah, which means Celia is Jonas's little sister, which means that everyone who's a descendant of Bartos and Celia is also related to Jonas.
Yeah, so,
which includes Charlotte. And
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Noah is Jonas's nephew.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yes,
we're on the same page.
That part's correct. All right, and then from there, because because he has Elizabeth, that means Elizabeth and Charlotte are both related to Jonas now as well.
It is. This is something I think we said, I don't know if it was season 1 or season 2, but the show presented it as, it's a story of 4 families. And over time we're like, it's kind of just one family, really, murkied up. And now more than ever, it is literally just one family. Yeah,
can we connect Jonas to some of the other ones?
Probably.
Yeah, well, because we said already that, all of Martha's family, like Ulrich and all that, but because the unknown's Tronte's father, that means that Ulrich, everyone in his family, they're all connected to Jonas, via descendants, and Martha as well, funnily enough. Again, cycling stuff. So that's a lot. I mean, even just before we even try and connect anyone else, that's like 3 of the families all tied to Jonas immediately. Yeah. So, yes. Very complex. So that stuff was interesting. It was interesting sort of just getting the story of Bart, because Bartos, to an extent, has always been kind of ever since season 1 has been kind of a background character, and it was kind of nice for him to get like a proper subplot here of just sort of going through his life.
He was like a mild antagonist in the first season, kind of being drawn in by Noah, and seemingly on the dark side for a while, but he's kind of been pushed to the side a little bit since then. Once all the rest of the kids in the 2019, 2020 kind of found out about time travel, he kind of got forgotten about.
Yeah, I will say there was kind of an odd thing here where they did the transition to Earth 2 as we expected, but then it never transitioned back. It clearly went back to Earth 1, but it never did the transition.
Yeah, I thought that was a strange choice as well.
From that point on, so maybe they just trust us, because it was very clear whenever we were in the it was because the Mad Max looking version of that room, with all the sand. So I mean, it's very clear where we are every time we go there. But
well, that's true. Maybe do it once just to establish it in the episode, and then when you see this room again, you already know where you are. And this show definitely places a lot of trust in its viewers, even in an episode like this, which is mostly just clearing things up, right? And hey, these are all the things that maybe you missed or maybe you didn't, but it's just confirming a lot of connections.
I think what this episode's purpose was, more than anything else, outside of maybe like establishing some of the motivations for characters like Noah and how he gets that name, Adam gives him that name, it's kind of, for me, it was like actually showing the growth, because there's so many like characters, and specifically in this episode, I'm thinking of Jonas and a couple others who we see, 17, whatever they are, we see then at like 40 something, and then we see them, in their old age as Adam, right? And this episode was kind of about, here's some transitionary scenes between those time periods to show you them aging, to show how one became the other. So we get a little bit of, we even get the actor who plays the stranger Jonas with the makeup on, so it's the start of the Adam phase.
It was bizarre seeing that, because it was so clearly a younger Adam, right? You could still tell that, but the makeup, great job on the makeup sex there. There
was other little things as well, like, in the time period where Jonas was about to kill himself, he had even though he doesn't actually have facial hair when you first see the other actor later, he does actually have a little bit of facial hair coming in, just to kind of show that, yeah, he maybe can grow a beard. Like, we're getting to that point. He's
on the road to being the stranger. That's very much, like I said, this is all the rest of the loop, like filling in those bits and kind of lining up for character beats. Just those transitions to show you how they kind of became those characters over 33 years. Yeah, the montage was basically just, here's all the scenes from season 1 and 2 where all these plot threads end up, this is where they all go. Based on, it's stranger Jonas being given the device and saying, hey, go to Tannhaus, he'll fix it, and getting all those directions and all these other beats. And obviously we have to talk about the fact that when we see Adam, or younger Adam, that version of him, which was 1911, that particular one, I noted that one down because I really wanted to just have it clear in my head when that transition particularly took place. And what reveals this, who gets to see him like this, it's Hannah showing up with young Celia. And obviously this is right after, or soon after, at least, relatively speaking, older Celia's died, and Bartos kind of sees her and is like, hey, like, he knows who she is, right? And he mentions that Jonas has changed a little bit, traveling's changed him, and I'm like, oh, he's turned into Adam, at least to a point. I think it's fascinating because I think we did see something in 1910 with Jonas, or not that far before, for sure. And it's like, he must have been doing a lot of travelling in these couple of years to kind of have done this. His experiments, with what he's been doing, really took a toll rapidly. It
was very impossible to keep track of all the exact years in this because it was changing them so rapidly. But there was definitely time periods here because you had like, the birth of Noah, and then there was a 10-year jump, and we saw the birth of Agnes, and it was clear Noah was about 10. It made sense. I think it was somewhere in that middle chunk where we saw him burn his, Jonas burn his arm, and he was trying to like do stuff with and I'm like, oh, that's how he gets all that scarred facing. He's going to be shocking himself left and right trying to get this thing working, and it's probably how he ends up with the face. But we have this thing with Hannah, and she gets to see him again, and it's something that I never even thought about that much, was that we probably should have some sort of Jonas and Hannah reunion at some point, because if you think about what she did, she pissed off to the 50s and didn't even seem to care that she was leaving her son like on his own and abandoned. Very selfish when you think about it in hindsight. And
I think part of her defense here, again, I don't really want to defend Hannah too much because she's one of the least sympathetic characters in the show somehow. Is she just recently, had a reunion with her son as the stranger and knew that, okay, he's okay up to that point. So maybe there is something there that she knows that her son is okay without her, at least up till, he's a proper adult.
Okay being relative. He's not had an easy life, as we see.
No, okay, that's fair. But he shows up, he's alive, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'll be honest, I am absolutely shocked she didn't try to screw her own son, to be honest. Given the context of this show and everything she's been up to, I feel like I'm surprised that stranger Jonas, and given that he's into his auntie, like, I just feel like the show was ripe for some straight up like direct incest. Is that what we call it when it's,
I saw a commenter say that they really went out of their way in this season and last to show Magnus and Franziska going at it like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I am like 80% confident that's because they were worried people might have thought there was some vibes between Magnus and Martha, and they were like, no, we really want to make sure people don't think that. I'm confident that is the reason why they have so many of those scenes.
Sure, it never occurred to me, but I mean, that's fair. But no, we have this thing where he's very cold with her, and she's trying to be, the gentle mother, like try to caress his face, and he just kind of slowly takes her hand away, and then kills her in the middle of the night. He goes into her room and just, suffocates her with his hands, with his bare hands.
It's brilliant because you kind of know it's coming. Not necessarily the exact moment or how he's going to do it, but that moment where she has her hand on his face, the music just gets a little sinister, and you kind of get worried for her. You're like, oh God, she's not getting out of this.
Yeah. Because he says that Celia's not where she's meant to be, and that's true. We know she's meant to be in the future. That's whenever we've really seen her before, is in that time period. So, he's going to somehow send her there. It is worth mentioning that Hannah, at least, is telling us, we don't see this, but she says that an old woman named Eve is who told her to come here and to find Jonas, and that Jonas was looking for her. So, again, is this Claudia pretending to be Eve? Because I could totally see that being a possibility.
Yeah, until she said Eve, I was like, she said, old woman. I was like, well, which one? Because you narrow it down to those two. And I was surprised she just outright said one of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously the other big thing with Claudia this episode is that we see that Earth 1 Claudia actually kills Earth 2 Claudia and infiltrates, at least briefly, Earth 2 by going and pretending to be Earth 2 Claudia, which was bound to happen at some point, someone pretending to be the other one.
Yeah, Eve definitely knew.
Oh yeah, you got the sense. But it's almost like she's not even mad, like this is what's supposed to happen kind of thing. Like,
yeah, it's like she's known this was going to happen, so it was like, I'll play along, but she drops just enough that we kind of know, or at least suspect that she knows.
Yeah, although it's old actress Eve, but she's not got white hair yet. She's still got dark hair, so it's kind of again transitionary. We're seeing, yes, because we don't see a lot of Earth 2 this episode. It's mostly Earth 1. It's like 95% Earth 1. Yeah, but that's the one little thing you get there.
Even this scene here is Claudia's scene, really. It's about our Claudia, not about Eve. So it's still, even though it's set on Earth 2 and it features an Earth 2 character, it feels like it belongs with the Earth 1 plot.
Do you think the finale is going to be all about Eve?
God damn it. That's terrible. Oh, I hate you so much sometimes.
That was fantastic, and you know it. So
you looked so smug. Like, I could see you think about it. Like, for like just 3 seconds before you said it, you were like, "Oh, I've got it," and you just looked so smug with yourself.
I regret nothing. So, but then she ultimately, she gets the plans for the device from Eve. So, assuming we think that Eve's expecting this, Eve wants those plans to go back to Earth 1, to go with Jonas, to go to the tan house, to all these things to ham.
Well, of course she does, because she wants the loop to perpetuate.
However, Claudia is insisting that this time it's going to be different, that this time they're actually going... And it's really bittersweet when she says that, because she says that about him, setting the bomb off in the tunnels, which we know doesn't work. We saw that in Season 1. That was the ending of Season 1. I think what's impressing me about this show is that ultimately the season breaks are kind of meaningless, in the sense that there were breaks for us because they had to take time off to make more episodes, because it's impossible for them to just do 20 plus episodes in one go. But ultimately, I feel like when you watch this in binge form after this point, when you can watch it all in one sitting, it all feels like one story. The cliffhanger at the end of Season 1 was a kind of a good season cliffhanger, because it was like a whole new element was introduced. But to be honest, like, so much of stuff that's happening in this season is linking up directly with Season 1 that it just feels like one big story.
No, I agree, and I think that's what's really impressive for me is how I was never felt like cheated at the end of a season. I never felt like, I'm only getting part of a story. I felt like, no, Season 1 had a story in its own right. It had a great ending and a great cliffhanger. Season 2, the city built on that. It had its own character arcs that we followed through that season, and it had its own great cliffhanger that opened up the next stage of the story yet again. So they really did a good job of, even though it is just one story when we look at it now. Yeah,
the trick when you look back at it was basically just to introduce a whole new layer to the complex mythology of the show right at the end of the season, just to give us that so the end of Season 1 it was like, hey, there's more time periods. End of Season 2 there's another world, and it was that simple.
And it almost feels like it's cheap when you just kind of boil it down to that level. But it's not, because it never felt cheap while you were watching it. It was exciting if you watched it, in real time as those seasons came out.
Yeah. So, but the big thing about Claudia, though, is the one thing we didn't mention about the ending, is the old lady Claudia, presumably before her death, obviously, shows up to Adam and is like, I don't even know what her line was, I can't remember. It was like, hello, Adam, or something. There was something simple.
I think she calls him Jonas.
She calls him Jonas, you're right. She calls him Jonas. But that's kind of her cliffhanger, is that she's there to kind of talk to him after his proposed paradise, the proposed double apocalypse that would lead to the end of the everything.
It's one of the few words I'm now confident on in German, because they said it that many times this episode.
Oh, go on. What was it?
Paradise.
Paradise. Oh.
Yeah, very similar, but they said it that many times that it's stuck in my brain, and it's like one of maybe 3 words I could now say in German.
There's actually a bunch of words where it's basically the same word, they just pronounce it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
If you're paying attention to the subtitles.
Oh no, there is. It was like there was one point in the translation in like season 2 where they changed, like I think they did inches and they changed it to centimeters, or the other way around. No, it was the other way around, because I recognized centimeters. Whatever it was in German, it was close enough that my ears heard it and went, I know what they said there. But there was a disconnect because I was reading inches. And it was like jarring, even though I get completely why they did it.
Yeah, there's sometimes this little trend. Obviously, they changed the whole sentence because it just makes more sense this other way. But sometimes I'll hear them say, like, there was an episode a couple episodes ago where I think Charlotte or someone said, someone was asked like how they were, and someone said, I'm fine, or everything's fine. And if you listen to the dialogue, though, they clearly say the word good. So they clearly say everything's good or something to that effect, but it's changed to fine. And it's just
contextual translation. It's less about the exact wording that matters. It's more about getting the spirit and the purpose of the line across. And sometimes when you translate languages, you have to change words like that to make it work for your audience.
And the truth is, German's actually, it uses the same alphabet. Like there's a lot of similar words, so we can notice these things. Whereas when I'm watching something in Japanese, I'm never going to notice any of this in Japanese because it's so different.
A wonderful way of noticing things in Japanese like that is if you watch an anime and if you watch it dubbed, but put the original, like the subtitles on, which are just if you put the Japanese subtitles, which are like just the raw translation, versus the adapted dubbing for to make things actually fit neater, you can see these differences line up really nicely.
Yeah, I'm never going to do that though.
No, you're not going to do it. It's just a nice experiment if people want to hear those differences in a different way.
Yeah. So we see Tannhaus build his machine in the bunker over time, as he basically philosophizes over
Pretty
himself. And he turns it on. That's kind of the last we see of his stuff, is when he turns his machine on.
And I was getting the impression that almost he was the father of old blind Tannhaus. The way that there was a For Charlotte watch with him, the story of the man who tried to find his wife. He was convinced that maybe he could travel in time. I don't know. I was just kind of getting those vibes.
That makes sense. That said, he's pretty old by the time he eventually, if he's still going to travel, because we see him in the 80s and he's, and we even see that transition. It's doing like a montage through like the decade of him building stuff in this basement. Because we start off in whatever year, it's like 79 or something, and by the time it's done, it's like 86. And it's like, okay, right, he's got grey hair now. He looks like he did back in season 1.
I could be wrong on that. There was just like an impression I got with his determinism.
That would make sense. It would just be a case of like, what age is he when he fathers this blind kid, or not the blind kid, sorry, the older dude that's with him. So that stuff's there. Who else we got to talk about? Who have we missed over here? Obviously, we didn't quite mention that. We mentioned Elizabeth and we didn't mention Charlotte and older Elizabeth stealing the baby, because we have adult Elizabeth, but she's got long hair, so it's very clear, and she's not got as much injuries on her face either. So again, very clear where we are on the timeline. It's kind of funny to think about that. This young to early middle-aged Noah, this Elizabeth, Jonas from age 18 to early 40s, whatever it is, like. It's so weird that they spent all this time together in the future for so long before they could travel again.
Yeah, there was that line, way back to Noah that from Adam that they would become friends, and then he'd betray him, and at the time it was always like, well, whatever. And right up until this episode, I wouldn't have seen that. But now you see fragments, of glimpses of these years they spent together, and I get it. I understand why they were friends.
Similar caveat at the other end of the spectrum actually is in the what starts off in the the 1880s, but it keeps going until obviously the 1920s when we saw them in season 2, is that a lot of those characters were trapped there for a long time. Bartos, even mentions, you've been promising us to get us out of here. And at that point, it's only been like 2 years. And then, of course, we keep going, and we get to the point where he's had 2 kids, and he's a middle-aged man.
And they've lived most of their lives
Yeah.
in that time period now.
Yeah. So all of that clicking together was definitely satisfying to watch.
Yeah, but to go back to the Elizabeth and Charlotte stuff.
Yeah.
That was kind of a heartbreaking scene, actually, to watch, because so you have the 2 sent back from the future to come and steal the baby. And it's Elizabeth stealing her own baby from herself, and she would have spent years distraught over this.
Mm-hmm.
Her reaction, her and Noah,
it shows
both absolutely horrified.
It shows how much she's been essentially brainwashed by Adam to believe this has to happen. This has to go. We have to go through with this to get to paradise. Of course, little does she know that paradise is nothing.
Yes,
that's all he wants.
I loved hearing his interpretation of paradise. I think that was in this episode where he kind of talks about it, and almost everything he says is technically true. If you look at it, like everything he says, there's only like one point at the end, I think, where he kind of outright tells a lie, but everything else he says is true. We'll be in the same place as your mother, and all this pain you've gone through, you will never have gone through it, and it's like, everything he's saying is technically true. He's not lying outright there. It's just from a very twisted viewpoint of how he perceives it.
There is a caveat to the caveat being, of course, that everyone's expecting to actually be experiencing all these things, when ultimately the answer is no. The paradise is not experiencing anything. It's that we just all get to rest.
Of course, he just conveniently doesn't tell them that part.
Yeah. And we kind of touched on it, but you just mentioned that old Martha, Eve, that is, slashes young Martha, the one that comes with Bartos, back to Earth too, and is like...
They had a very similar conversation to one that Jonas and Adam had.
Mm-hmm.
The I spent my whole life thinking about this moment. I couldn't believe that I would be on the opposite side saying these things, yet here I am.
Yep.
And just another bit of symmetry, I guess.
So we're still left with this question of what this last episode is going to be, outside of the broad idea of, okay, whatever new world has been created, if there has been one created, because I suspect obviously we're going to have this Claudia Adam conversation of some kind, and I suspect that might be, I can see that being like the framing device for whatever we actually see throughout the rest of the episode. But I could be wrong. That could just be the start.
Fascinated, because it's not like there is an immediate shift or change like Adam was clearly expecting.
No.
Nothing happened seemingly at first. So I'm excited to see what the ramifications are. What does change? What happens now?
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know. I think at its core, this episode for me was about showing the actual characters where they lived most of their lives, because that was kind of the thing that was missing up until this point, is everything was so fragmented with them being in different time periods. This was like, no, this is where, this is the 2 time periods where Jonas became Stranger and where Stranger became Adam. These were these 2 eras.
Yeah, the truly formative parts of their lives.
Yeah,
is kind of what we witness here. And like I say, this episode, what it did for Noah, is like one of the best episodes of the show for him, in terms of his character. It's some really great stuff that's going on in here, even if it is, for the most part, this episode, it's not that I'd say, oh, skip it. It's more just unnecessary for a lot of it. If you took this episode away, in terms of understanding the plot and even understanding most of the characters, very little would change. You would still get all of these things from context. It's just nice to actually see some of it.
Yeah. It goes back again that, I remember back in season 1 speculating about Noah and Elizabeth, because there's that scene where he meets her and gives her the watch, and it's clear that he knew that was going to be his wife, but obviously he didn't know that Charlotte was going to be his daughter. So he did know some stuff. It's not like he's oblivious in those early scenes. Like, there was a reason why that that scene had like a double meaning where it felt like he knew things. It felt like, because I remember like theorizing about that and going, oh, there's some subtext here. Like, why is he talking to her? What does she mean to him? There was definitely something there. So
yeah, and obviously we learned in season 2 that connection, but seeing it here, I feel I actually understand the relationship now, rather than it feel like, because up to this point there was always like almost an almost creepy element to it, because it was this grown man talking to this child, and he's like, oh, this is my future wife sort of thing, but there is a genuine relationship between them throughout this episode.
Because the first times we ever seen them, and even to a certain point, we'd only ever seen young Elizabeth, and then once we got to the older Elizabeth, it was like, okay, this battle-torn Elizabeth, like, when would her know a thing? Like, what, like, it doesn't feel that this woman does not feel like she had like some sort of romantic life in her past. She feels like she's been a hard-torn warrior her whole life.
Right, and I can only assume losing her child like this pushed her even more towards this edge, because obviously, their plot ends with Noah going, I'm going to go and find, I'm going to go find her, I'm going to get her back, and going back through time, and that's kind of his thing.
And basically it never comes back to the future.
And yeah, it never comes back, because that's when, it ends with him back in the 1920s, with his younger self, and he's there, and oh look, here I am with Adam, and Adam sends him off on his journey with the pages.
Yeah.
But for Elizabeth, she's left on her own in the post-apocalypse, and without her daughter or without her partner, and now she's got to survive.
Yeah, and she's so dependent on him as well. The way that it's one thing when she's a kid early on, she's with younger Noah, and she's saying, tell me about paradise, but when she asks him that again, just randomly, like, 15 years later, whatever it is, and they're both adults, and it really sells, like, nothing's changed. She still has to believe in something better, because the world's such a rough, bad place, because she's lost everything, because she has very little. I mean, she has her baby at this point, not for long, in that particular scene. But yeah, it's interesting because Noah goes to try and kill Jonas after that. He tries to strangle him, and it's funny because Noah's the very person who years prior gave him the experiment. He gave him the lesson on how he cannot die.
It's what Jonas doesn't even really try and stop him. He just knows that he'll stop before he kills me. He just will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I'd be interested to see if it plays with that a bit more in the final episode, but. Here we are. We're getting into the finale. We're getting into unknown territory and see how all this comes together. Which the internet has apparently told us that it will all be neatly tied up in a bow.
Yeah, this is the make or break episode, right? That will cement this as an all timer in TV shows, or will be something it could have been.
So we'll find out. But let us know what you thought of the penultimate episode in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe. Liking is very important. It lets YouTube know that you think we're worth recommending out, and it'll do so. So please do that. You can also support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble and help keep all the content coming. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?